Taiwan shoots down Chinese drone. China aims to gain strategic control of island chain by 2035. Pentagon to hold classified meetings for space weapons. China may have committed crimes against humanity. EU members agree on suspension of visa deal for Russians. Experts say Russia can't win in Ukraine. Women who stay single and don't have kids are getting richer. South Korea has world's lowest fertility rate.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It's Friday, September 2nd, and here are your top stories. Bloomberg reported on late Thursday, September 1st, that Taiwan downed a civilian drone after weeks of complaints about incursions by unmanned aerial vehicle from China. A sign Taipei is pushing back against Beijing's efforts to encroach on its territory. The media said that according to a statement from the garrison on the Taipei-held outpost just off China, Taiwanese troops shot the drone down near Cayman Island around noon on Thursday after attempts to repel it failed. Taiwan media outlet The Liberty Times said the drone fell in the water after it was downed.
The kind that you can easily buy off the internet. There is no reason to believe that these drones were weaponized. So why is this a big deal? Because they came from China and they entered Taiwan's airspace, and this is technically an incursion.
According to the Liberty Times, the unidentified civilian drone intruded the air above Kinmen on Thursday, September 1st at 12:03 p.m. The garrison troops stationed there followed standard operating procedures and whistled, flared, and fired warning shots trying to chase the drone out of Taiwan's territorial skies, but ultimately failed. The Kinmen Defense Command said defensive fire was conducted immediately after the failure of cautious warnings. According to the Liberty Times, the civilian drone fell into the water without debris found on the scene.
Taiwan's defense ministry said in a report to the Legislative Yuan, China was continuing to strengthen its combat preparedness for an attack on the island. It was focusing on the first island chain, which runs through Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and on to Borneo, enclosing China's coastal seas. China has been using combat drills to carry out simulated attacks on U.S. ships that enter into the first island chain. The report said China aims to gain strategic control of the first island chain by 2035.
It launched its third aircraft carrier dubbed 003. It's the first ship of a brand new class. Ship's name is Fujian after a Chinese province. It's China's biggest aircraft carrier ever.
The ministry said in the report, which was dated Thursday, September 1st, that it expected China's newest aircraft carrier to enter service in 2025, but noted Beijing still has transport and logistics constraints to launch a full-scale invasion. The ministry said China could also use gray zone tactics to change the military status quo, including by sending drones and rubber boats into Taiwan's territory or deploying sea militia. Taiwan has complained of repeated harassment by Chinese drones and shot one down yesterday.
According to a report that Express posted on its website on September 1st, the Pentagon is set to hold highly classified meetings next week to discuss the growing threat it faces as Russia and China develop new types of space weapons. The meeting will look into how space-to-ground weapons could impact U.S. military abilities and how to deal with them. This meeting will be attended by senior U.S. Department of Defense leaders, including Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks.
And as such may present a risk to NATO capability delivery. This at a time when the rapid evolution of world events continues to challenge our ability to predict, prepare for, and address emerging strategic security threats.
According to an agenda for the meeting, which is scheduled for September 6th and 7th, the U.S. is concerned with how China and Russia's potential development of fractal orbital bombardment systems and space-to-ground weapons could impact U.S. deterrence and strategic stability. The meeting will also be attended by the Defense Policy Board, which is an influential advisory group comprised of former national security officials. They will consider U.S. response options to the potential development of such capabilities by any adversary.
The outgoing UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, said in a report on Wednesday that China's arbitrary and discriminatory detention of Uyghurs and other Muslims in the country's Xinjiang region may constitute crimes against humanity. Just minutes before her 4-year term ended, the former president of Chile said in a report that serious human rights violations have been committed in Xinjiang in the context of the government's application of counterterrorism and counter-extremism strategies.
Hatred and distortions of democracy, disregard of the rule of law, many societies are evolving or plunging into increased repression and violence, rising poverty, anger, and conflict.
In the report released on Wednesday, Bachelet said, "The extent of arbitrary and discriminatory detention of members of Uyghur and other predominantly Muslim groups may constitute international crimes, in particular, crimes against humanity. There are credible indications of violations of reproductive rights through the coercive enforcement of family planning policies since 2017. She recommended the Chinese government to take prompt steps to release all those detained in training centers, prisons, or detention facilities.
The European Union's top diplomat Josep Borrell said the bloc's 27 members have agreed to suspend an agreement with Russia, which had made it easier for Russians to obtain tourist visas, as a sanction for Moscow's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Borrell announced the decision on August 31st after the second day of a meeting of EU foreign ministers in the Czech capital. However, the decision falls short of the total ban on visa issuance that some countries sought.
Radio Free Europe reported that a 2007 visa agreement to ease EU entry requirements for Russians was partially suspended in late February, targeting people close to Russian President Vladimir Putin, such as official Russian delegations and holders of diplomatic passports. But it left so-called ordinary Russians untouched, allowing them to continue to enjoy EU visa facilitation benefits, such as reduced waiting times and costs, and the need to present fewer documents when applying.
Express.co.uk reported that war strategy expert Harry Kazianis said that U.S. Special Forces have been training Ukrainians for years. Much of this training took place clandestinely. Kazianis described the current level of guerrilla warfare being unleashed by Ukrainian forces as being insane, warning that it will only get worse as the months and years go by. He said Putin is said to be annihilated by Ukrainian guerrilla forces, which have been secretly trained by the United States.
Kaziani said, "Russia really only had a window of 1 to 2 months to win this war, or cleave off the eastern part of Ukraine, which was its goal. And now because they don't have the military forces to do that, it gives the Ukrainians the advantage to start spitting up guerrilla forces or partisan forces, a lot of which were probably trained secretly by U.S. Special Forces." Kazianis added that this freed up training to be brought forward to other Ukrainian commanders in the field.
According to new research from the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, single women without kids had an average of $65,000 in wealth in 2019, compared with $57,000 for single child-free men. For single mothers, the figure was only $7,000. The new finding comes after a Pew Research Center study last year, which found that 44% of Americans aged 18 to 49 who don't have kids say it's not likely or not at all likely they will procreate someday, an increase of 7% from 2018.
According to a U.S. Census Bureau analysis, U.S. birth rates have been falling for the past 30 years as people get married later in life and put off having children. In 1990, there were about 71 births per year for every 1,000 women aged 15 to 44. By 2019, that had dropped closer to 58 births. At the same time, the share of women aged 25 to 34 who don't have kids reached a record in 2018. Many experts point to the rising cost of raising a family as an important factor in Americans' decisions to have fewer or no offspring.
According to figures released last Wednesday by the Korean government, South Korea has again recorded the world's lowest fertility rate, with the number sinking to lower than 1 child per woman in 2018. The figure had dropped to 0.81, down from 0.84 the previous year, and a sixth consecutive decline. In comparison, the average rate across the world's most advanced economies is 1.6 children. Basically, countries need at least 2 children per couple, a 2.1 rate to keep their population at the same size without migration.
The BBC reported that in 2020, there was widespread alarm in South Korea when it recorded more deaths than births for the first time. For the new figure in the 2021 report, experts cited higher living costs, a spike in housing prices, and the impact of the COVID pandemic as factors discouraging them from having children. Experts said a declining population can put a country under immense strain. A declining youth population also leads to labor shortages that impact the economy.
And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. Let's make every day a fun day. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I will see you next time.